Hey guys, I'm Annie. You might know me from my TikTok or my LinkedIn, or it's the future already, and my book has been published, and you read my book, and that's what brought you here. Whatever brought you here, welcome. Today, what I'm doing is we together are going to create a guided Tableau project. So the idea that I have here is that I want to create a series of projects that can showcase different skill levels in Tableau, starting from very first project going all the way up to regular Tableau user. So what we're doing today is we're making a very first Tableau project example and then upgrading that to see kind of what that could look like as a beginner project. So what we're trying to do here is essentially give you a tour of Tableau, because your very first time using Tableau, you're not trying to do anything crazy, you're not trying to get any big insights out of it, you're just trying to use Tableau. So I picked a really simple data set from Maven Analytics. Maven Analytics has this data playground, which has all of this free data that you can use, and this is where I got the data from right here. You can see it actually has a recommended analysis. We're not going to worry too much about that right now because we're just doing the first project. However, it's a really great place to get data. That's where I got it from. That's where we're doing this project from. And I'm just going to step you through each step of creating a first project, upgrading it to a beginner, and kind of give you the Tableau tour along the way. For context, I'm a Tableau consultant. I've been using Tableau at my job every day for about 10 months. So I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I've gotten fairly good at it, and I kind of know what I use it for with my different clients. So as we go along, I'll just kind of give you my observations of like, I would hide the axis here, or I would add padding here for things that you can go and do on your own, but I'm going to keep this project to how I think it looks like when it's your very first project or a beginner project. So here we are, we're in Tableau Public. I'm using Tableau Public on purpose because not everyone has access to Tableau Desktop. If you have a student email though, you can get access to it for a year for free. That's a big tip. So I downloaded the data already, and we're going to connect here to our Excel file. So what it does automatically is it brings in the first sheet of the Excel file, which is this New Year's resolutions sheet right here. If I wanted to add in more data, I could do it like with joins like here, but we don't need that. This is where I can find all the different columns from my Excel spreadsheet. And this is kind of like a sample, like just at the top head of the data for us to look at. So everything's fine here. We don't need to do anything with that. We can go over to our sheet 1 here. So now here we are. We're looking at a completely blank page in Tableau, and you might feel a little bit overwhelmed by this. But don't worry, I'm going to give you a little tour. Once you get used to it, it's really not so bad. So basically, Tableau is meant to visualize data, right? So we've got a couple of key things that we need to know for visualizing data. Here's where we're creating our columns or our rows of data. So look what happens if I put something on columns. We created columns of data versus rows. We've now created rows of data. So that's what these are. And then over here is where our actual data is. So here's all of the different columns coming in from our spreadsheet, as well as the latitude, longitude, because it's recognized that we've got state in here. So this is generated. When it's italicized like that, it means it's a generated field by Tableau. And then finally here is a count. It just counts every single row in the data. So I can show you if I take retweet count and I put it right here. Now we've just made some rows of data. This is just a table though. If I wanted to make it into an actual visualization, I could bring it up here, and now I have these bars. Or if we wanted to switch these around, if we wanted them to be bars the other direction. So that's what that looks like. Also, we can change the color, we can change the size of things. So we're just going to stick with this retweet count measure here. I should say up here above the line, these are dimensions. So these are like color or gender or state. They're not a number. They don't run on an axis. Whereas down here are measures. So these are usually like numbers. You can count them. Things like dates can get a little bit funny which way it goes, but generally that's the gist of it. So let's say I wanted to color the bars by retweet count. So what we can see, my face is in the way, this here shows us the intensity of the color. We can edit the colors, you can try out all kinds of different color schemes. And that just, right now, the intensity color of the bars is the same as the height of the bars. As a general tip, I don't actually recommend doing that. I see that in a lot of beginner projects where people will color the color intensity of the bars with the exact same measure that they're using to make the height of the bars. That doesn't tell us anything insightful. They're the same thing. It's kind of redundant, but just for this beginner project, while we're looking around, I just wanted to show you what that looks like. Another cool thing to show you here is this Show Me button. So if we click Show Me, it drops down and we can like play with different chart types that we have available to us. It just makes it for us. And we can look over here, we can see things changing in the marks card here and up top based on what we have selected. So if this is your first time in Tableau, I would encourage you to kind of play around with these different things, see your different options, get familiar, especially with what happens, kind of the difference between something in columns, something in rows, and the different options in the marks card. So let's talk about making a dashboard. A dashboard is just a collection of charts. For our very first project, we don't need to do anything insightful with it. It's just going to essentially be a collection of charts that allows our end user, the person who's using the dashboard, to get some insights out of it. So here's some, I'm going to walk you through a couple of the different things that I think should be on this dashboard based on this data set. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new sheet, and this sheet, so each sheet will be kind of a different container, or I've heard someone use the word widget before, on a dashboard. So I'm going to look over to the left because I've actually got kind of the end state that we're going for because I can't do everything super well on the fly. But over here on the left, I'm looking at the first thing that I want to make here is a tweet category bar chart, which is essentially what I just showed you. So I'm going to take tweet category, I'm going to put it up here on columns, and then I don't actually want a retweet count. I'm not interested in the retweet. I actually want the number of tweets. So for now, in a more advanced project, I would want to make a calculated field. I never use this automatically generated count field. I always make it into a calculated field. The way that I do it is I find kind of the ID for the table, like whatever the most detailed level of the table is, which is often ID. I'll put that into a calculated field, which is, this is how you make a calculated field. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to drag this count of the table out here. So now we can see of the different categories what the tweets were, the number of tweets were. And just as a reference, usually I hide my axis because I end up using labels. So you don't need an axis. If you want to hide your axis, you can right click, get rid of it. But we're not going to do that for this project. We're not going to worry about labels. We're not getting fancy here. And then, just because we are playing around with our different options here, I'm going to take New Year's resolutions, the one we just used up here, and I'm going to put it in the marks card on color. So this is actually redundant. I would encourage you to think about how else you could color the bars besides the exact same measure that you've got up here, because this doesn't really tell us anything all that insightful. But because it's our first project, we're going to do it for now. So what this is telling us right here is that the darkest blue has the most tweets, and my face is in the way again. The darkest blue has the most tweets, the lightest blue has the least tweets. And if we come up here, we can do it from here. We can click on color, edit colors, or we can come here, edit colors. And you can play around with, there's tons of different color palettes here. I almost never use the diverging color palettes because it has that gray in the middle. And I just find that like you want it to be like blue or green, but you like don't want it to be gray. But I do sometimes use the built-in single palette. There's also an option to choose your own colors here. So we'll keep that color palette here. And then I'm going to rename here to TweetCat. Now I have to reach all the way over here to my keyboard because I have a microphone and a webcam plugged in, as well as my mouse, and my computer can't accept like another thing from my normally like detached keyboard. So every time I type, I'm gonna have to reach all the way over here. So we've got tweet category as this sheet. We renamed it. We're ready to go on to our next sheet. So the next thing we are going to do here is we're going to look at an all-time, I'm thinking it would be really cool to put on this dashboard just kind of like a map of like, well, not a map, but like a showing, you know, like of over the course of the whole data set when were tweets happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take tweet created and I'm going to bring it out here onto columns because this is setting me up to make a line chart here. And I'm actually going to right click on it and I would like to do it by the hour here. And then I'm going to turn the mark into a line. And then the same field that we used before to count the number of tweets, I'm going to pull out here. So now this is kind of cool. Like we can see over time here, my face is in the way, we can see this data set starts at December 22nd and it goes to the end of January 2nd, which is interesting because it looks like there was still more data. Like they should have kept creating, kept collecting data after January 2nd because we're not back down to 0 yet. So anyways, this is good to go. We're going to call this all time. And then we are going to create a new sheet here. So on this next sheet, I am going to do something called a ban. So a ban is it stands for big ass number. I don't know any other way to say ban besides just saying ban. And basically, these are usually used at the top of your dashboard, and they're just like a number to give people like a quick overview context. Bans are really, really commonly used in dashboards. So for this one, it's going to be total tweets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this count of how many we have, and I'm going to put it onto text. So now we just have a text value here. And then I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to edit the text. So I'm going to click text, click these buttons, and then what's happened here is now we've opened this up. So the way that we normally format bans is we make them a little bit bigger and a little bit more bold so that the number itself stands out. And then the word we do normal sizing, and we're going to say here total tweets. And then I want the alignment to be centered. And then there we go. I'm going to call this total tweets ban. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just building one sheet at a time, and then we'll come into a dashboard. I should have said this earlier. Normally when I make a dashboard, I go into something called Figma or just pen and paper, and I outline what I want the dashboard to be. But what I did when I created this is I just kind of thought through like what would be interesting to display? Like what can I display? What information can I display on a dashboard based off of the very limited number of columns and measures that I have available to me? So the next one, now we're going to do a map. It's funny because people who use Tableau regularly like complain about the map, but new users to Tableau, they see Tableau mapping and they're like, whoa, this is so cool. So there's a couple different ways to make a map, but the easiest way is to just, anything that has this, you see how this says tweet state and then it has a little geography, like a little globe? That means it knows that it's a geographic field. So I'm just going to double click on it, and we now have our map here of the different states where things are tweeted out from. What I can also do, if I don't like that, you see this show me button here? We can turn it into that. So this is the map style I want to use. I wasn't super vibing on dots. Something that I do when I make dashboards for my clients is that I almost never use this default view. I end up making a separate sheet for Alaska and a separate sheet for Hawaii, and then kind of putting them together in different containers on the dashboard, because like all of this white space is like a very impractical use of space on a dashboard. But we're not going to worry about that for now. And you can guess what we're going to use as our measure here. Again, the same one, the count of tweets, we're going to put on color. So now what this is saying is that by the darkest blue states have the most tweets coming out of them. The other option is to do it by retweet count, but because we already did our bars by number of tweets, doing retweet count would be misleading unless you like very specifically put that into the name of the sheet or into instructions or something like that. So I think that brings us through everything I wanted to put. Yes. Okay. So now we're going to make a dashboard. So these little icons down here, this is a sheet button to make a new sheet. This is a dashboard button to make a new dashboard. And this is a story button to make a new story. I'll be honest with you, I've worked with almost 20 clients and I've never once used a story. It's just, I see people use it who are new to data, and it's fine if you want to use it kind of as like, stories are like allow you to do like almost PowerPoint style presentations like with different slides, but in the real world of consulting, I just don't use them. So we want to make a dashboard. And then I don't understand why Tableau Public like does this as the default, like sizing. Tableau Desktop doesn't do it this way. So what we want is we want a fixed size, and then I'm just going to do desktop browser. And I think this is what the default is in like Tableau Desktop. Again, I don't know why Public has those really weird sizings to begin with. So now we're looking at a dashboard. Again, we're looking at like kind of a new thing that's like completely blank. But basically, we're going to, on this dashboard, we're going to take all the sheets that we had before, see how they fit on the dashboard in what order. For now, we're just going to put them out on the dashboard. But for you, if you're thinking about like, if you have this question of like, where should I put things on a dashboard? Bands and filters are like always at the top, because like the bands are like the biggest amount of information, like the highest overview. So they always go at the top because we read from top to bottom, left to right. So bands go at the top, filters go at the top. Usually title goes at the top, logo goes at the top. Sometimes some of these things can go on the left as well because we read left to right, top to bottom. And then you want to think about analytical flow of things, like generally if you're at a state level and then you want to show at a city level, you then shouldn't jump back to state level because that doesn't have like a clean flow. But again, we're not going to worry about that right now because this is our first project. We're just getting things out onto a dashboard and seeing what that looks like. So these things here, another thing that I want to put out there, when you do your first project, totally okay to just use floating. So the difference between tiled and floating is that if you put things on in a tiled manner, it like needs to snap into like a certain spot. Whereas if you bring sheets out that are floating, you can put them wherever you want, you can size them however you want, you can layer them on top of each other. As a Tableau consultant, I almost never use floating sheets. I build everything in a tiled layout because it's more sustainable if we're using on different devices, different screens, things won't move around. It's just kind of best practice to use tiled containers. However, very first project, totally cool to use floating. I absolutely did on my first 3 projects at least. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, okay, let's get out all of our different sheets that we have made here. We have this all-time one, which I'm thinking would be like a really cool thing to just put all the way across the bottom like this. Yeah, that's kind of cool, isn't it? And then we've got our total tweets, which I know I said it goes to the top. It goes to the top or on the left. And so we're going to put the band on the left here. And then we are going to take our map. Map is going to come here. And then finally, we have, oh, did I forget to make a sheet? Oh, I forgot to make a sheet. Okay, I forgot to make a sheet. My last sheet that I was thinking would go well on this dashboard here, we're going to make a new sheet. And then, okay, here you can drag, see how you can drag their order? I'm just going to drag it over because that's where it would have been if I had made it before making the dashboard. And this one is called Tweet Time. So tweet time, I'm interested in seeing with this, like the question here is what time of day is the most popular for tweets to be happening. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my tweet created and I'm going to put it back on columns because I want to make a line chart again. And this time I'm going to put it on hour. Awesome. And then I'm going to take again my count field. Awesome. So now we can see that 9 a.m. and noon were the most popular times of day across all of the days for tweets to be created. And I'm going to call this tweet time. Okay, awesome. Tweet time, I'd like to put that up here. Okay, so now we've kind of got this scaffold of a dashboard here. And I'm going to just start moving things around and adjusting them. So what I want is this bar chart is like the highlight here. I think this is kind of the most important thing that I've got on the dashboard, looking at the different categories that the tweets are in. And then kind of the second, and this here is a legend, like a color legend for the map. So I'm going to put it down here for now. So here, this guy is an interesting player in the equation. I can't believe I'm playing with floating containers. I never move things around floating containers like this. It's funny to do it. And then we've got our map of tweet count here. Awesome. And then its legend is actually hiding behind it. So I'm going to grab it. Okay. And put that back down. Awesome. Okay, and now we have for context. Now, I don't like that this is on the left here, so here's an option. So what we can do, it took me like 5 months to figure this out, and like I had been using Tableau, so probably took me like 9 months of using Tableau to figure this out. You can change like how the fit of it is with this kind of drop down here, or you can just do it from, like once the sheet is selected, you can do it from the top of the dashboard. I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out. But bands, I always use this entire view selection. In fact, most sheets, I use this entire view. I almost never go with standard. I use fit width or fit height if I have a table that's really long. Then if you use entire view, it'll squish it all in. So then I use fit width. So that's when I use those options. I want to get these so they're not overlapping each other. Awesome. And then you just are consistently in the way. And now let's pull this down. And then you know what I'm actually going to do, because I don't really like the sizing of this, I'm going to come over here. This is kind of like your dashboard options here. I'm actually just going to make this whole dashboard a little bit wider. There's not usually good reason or rhyme for like a specific dashboard layout. I'd say like in general, you just want to make sure like that it fits on the screen and people don't have to scroll unless you have a good reason for wanting them to scroll. So I'm actually just going to make this a little bit wider, give things some room to breathe here. I would love to be able to get these labels to rotate, but I think I would need way too much space for that. So I'm not going to stress about it too much. Okay, so we know how many tweets we have total. We know that we've got these are the different categories. We know the time that they were tweeted out. We know kind of like where the most popular tweets are happening. And then we've got kind of this all-time graph here. Now, the last thing that I would say, okay, now we got the last thing. We can add in a title of our dashboard, which can be New Year's Eve resolutions. Is it resolutions or is it revolutions? No, it would be resolutions. Okay. So I'm just centering it, I'm bolding it, turning it to black instead of gray, and making it a little bit bigger. So now we have a title for our dashboard here. And there's no easy way to center things. If you're using the tiled option, like I showed you before, it will center it automatically. But we're not, so we're just going to have to eyeball it. And so the last thing that I wanted to do here is I wanted to add on some filters. So this is something I didn't show you. And so what happens, sorry, getting around in circles here with my words. What we can do once we're on a dashboard is we can go to any one of the sheets. Instead of we can click down here, but sometimes when you have a big long workbook, it's like a lot of clicking that you need to do. You need to like kind of scroll to find the right one. So instead you can say, I just want to go to this sheet. Boom, brings you right there. So what if I wanted to add filters onto this data so that the end user could like apply filters and filter the whole dashboard? We can do that. So here's our filter shelf, just like we have a marks card. This is where the marks things live. This is where columns and rows live. Here's where filters live, always. So I can take gender, and then for now, all. I want both options. And then I would also maybe like to use tweet category. Again, we want all. Or maybe I'd be interested to see like by region. All. Here's 3 filter options. Now, you'll see if I go to another sheet that it's not filtering like that. So this doesn't apply to all sheets unless you do something with it. So here's another thing that I figured out. What you can do, I think, like, this is something that I will show you the way that I do it, like not the very first way. So the very, very first project way of doing this would be to apply each of these to like each of the sheets and maybe show them individually on the dashboard, or here's what you can do. You can go to apply to worksheets. You can use all using this data source. You can select the different worksheets that you want to apply it to, maybe all of them, maybe not. But I want to show you something really interesting that I just figured out like this month, which I think is the easiest way to do it. So again, this is the sheet we applied the filters to. We're back on the dashboard. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to filters. I'm going to find the filter that I want. It shows it. And then what I'm going to do is, you see this apply to worksheets, selected worksheets. Now you can choose select all on dashboard. This is super, super helpful because sometimes I have like 4 different dashboards in a workbook, and I add on a new sheet, I add a new filter, and then I have to like scroll through this list to like figure out which of the ones are from which dashboard that I want to add it to. But I just found this month this option that this only works when you're on the dashboard. If you're at the sheet, this doesn't work. Apply to worksheets, selected worksheet. You just have to scroll through all the options in the workbook. However, if you're on the dashboard, apply to worksheets, selected worksheets, select all on dashboard. So that is apparently a regular user's tip that I'm throwing into this beginner tutorial. So we want to do that for this one. And then what I want to do, this is kind of messy here. I don't want to see all these options. So there's different options for how filters can look. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down. Here's my options. And I think maybe I do want to allow them to use multiple categories at once. So I'm going to choose multiple values drop down. This is one of my most commonly used options for filters. I would encourage you, however, to play with the different options, see what they look like. So now I can choose from some or all of the different filter options. Now I think there was 2 more filters we need to find, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab tweet region, apply to worksheets, selected worksheets, select all on dashboard. Another thing that's totally fine to do for this project is to just do all using this data source. That's a fine first step too, which would be apply to worksheets, all using this or related data sources. I'm going to switch this over to being a multiple values dropdown. And then we've got one more filter here, gender, correct. Gender, bring it over, customize, and then apply to worksheets, selected worksheets, select all on dashboard. And then I'm going to turn this also into a multiple values dropdown. Okay, so now we're looking at New Year's Eve resolutions, tweets. We can see the different categories. We can see that personal growth was the most popular, and oh gosh, philanthropic, is that the way to say that word, is the least popular. We can see that the most popular times are 9 a.m. and noon, and the least popular time is 3 a.m., which makes sense. California is our most popular state. Something I will say about maps is that they kind of like do this, like the scrolling can be really annoying. What you can do is you can like click this button and it'll reset the map. Like if you accidentally like scroll yourself all the way in and then you're like, how do I fix this? That button, that's how you fix it. We also have kind of a view of this all time when the tweets happened, and a count of the total tweets. And let's look at what happens when we change some filters. Doesn't make the bar graph look very good, does it? And I'm going to make that. And then let's do only these two regions. I also don't love what that does to the map when we do that. And then let's do just female. Or we can put all of our, set them all back to all. So we've done it. Let's rename our dashboard. What are we calling this? Let's call this beginner, oh no, first project, first project. Awesome. So we've done it. We've walked through the different, we've created a couple of different types of sheets. I'd say that maps, bars, and lines are the most commonly used sheets, as well as text tables that I use. I know that it may seem like once you get to be more advanced in Tableau, you're going to do maybe creating all these crazy visualizations, but most people in the business world just want to see a text table, a bar chart, a line chart, or a map. They don't want anything crazy. They don't want anything fancy. So this is kind of the bones of every single project that I make. We've got some filters. We've got a band. We tried some different color options. I would encourage you to play with these. Think about other ways. You can hear my Slack notifications going off in the background. How can you color the bars differently? Can you think about a way to color the lines differently? Another thing is, can you think of how to make some calculated fields? The retweet count, I didn't really get into because I thought that probably it would be like a misleading, like, so if we're looking at retweet count by state, for example, we also have to figure out like how that relates to how many tweets happened in that state, right? And we don't have any metrics already built into this data set to like compare apples to apples here. So like if, let's say, for example, personal growth got like the most retweets. Yeah, but it also had the most tweets. So that would be a potential way to upgrade. Some things that I would also consider here is, like I said, I generally hide my axis on most of my projects by using labels. So playing around with different label options. I don't ever color the bars by the same measure that I've like done their height by. You could think about maybe how you could add like interesting things like what are the different types of lines you'd want to show. Another option is a date filter. I didn't add on any date filter yet, but here's an option. Here's all your options for like doing different date filters. So that's another thing I would think about. But in general, the really important part about this project was just that we got a sense for Tableau. Yeah, I've said a lot of words. I'm going to take a little pause, but then when we come back, we're going to be thinking about how can we take this dashboard and upgrade it to be a beginner project. And when I say beginner, what I mean by that is generally somebody who has not gotten their first job in data yet, but has maybe taken a course or done a bunch of projects in Tableau. So they're getting familiar with it. They're using some of the better like best practices. They're not just trying to figure out like what the heck is a marks card, but they don't have any formal training or like actual hands-on use from like an actual data job. So here we go.